So welcome everybody to What Fish and Which Bait. So the way the class is going to work out in general is, of course, as you can see, Easton's on the lake. So I suggest you switch your view, which if you're on a computer, you can go up to the corner and it'll say speaker view or gallery view. I suggest you put it on speaker view. That way whoever's talking, you'll just see them. So I will leave it on gallery. That way if one of you guys raise your hands or has a question, I'll be able to address it. So Easton is at Willisburg Lake. So it's a nice little lake. They have a launch fee if you take your boat. I think they have some bank access. I'll have to refer to Easton on that.
There's a little bit of bank access.
Okay. So what's the launch fee?
$6.
Okay, so $6 to launch. They have places to park a trailer and all that good stuff. It's a nice little lake, small. So
you'll find the launch fee on a lot of the smaller lakes.
Mm-hmm. And that money they just use to operate the marina and improve the lake. So that's where Easton's at today. So what's like the first real question we have? So are we all comfortable enough to know that this is a rod and reel? Or are we like, I want to know this type of reel, this type of bait? Like what's the big burning question you guys have? Anybody got one?
I don't know enough to even ask a question.
Okay, that's fine. That's what we need to know.
I can start with what I'm doing, Andrew.
Okay, well, we'll go to Easton here.
So like Andrew said, I'm at Willisburg. I fish this lake quite a bit, not this time of year though. So I usually don't fish at all this time of year because I'm in the woods hunting. But of course, for BOW, I'm here. So like I said, I've got a lot of history, I guess. I know a lot about this lake just from being on it so much during the summer. Conditions today, it can't decide if it wants to be super sunny and muggy or nice and cloudy for us. I would prefer cloudy, but we're going to take what we can get. If it's sunny, we're just going to try to focus on the shade. I don't remember exactly what was in the electronic stuff you all watch compared to what we usually talk about, but fish don't have eyelids. So on a really hot summer sunny day, they're going to either stick really tight to cover or they're going to be up under the limbs. I don't know what you all can see. I don't know if Justin can show you all some trees hanging over the water up here or not. So we're going to try to stick on shady banks mainly, especially if the sun stays out. So with this lake, if you look along the bank, there's a lot of rock. And what that tells me is if there's a lot of rock, there's probably a lot of crayfish. And if there's crayfish up shallow, there's going to be fish up shallow trying to eat the crayfish. So even this time of year, a lot of, if you see it on TV, a lot of people you talk to are going to say you have to go fish deep. The fish aren't shallow because the water's so warm. You've got to go deep. That's not the case, especially on these smaller lakes where they don't have 60, 70, 80 foot of water like they would, say, at Lake Cumberland. It doesn't matter to me what time of year it is. You can go shallow and catch fish. And to me, that's where I'm comfortable. That's what I know a little bit about. So with the conditions today, aside from whether it's going to be sunny or cloudy, what we do know is the lake's a little bit down. It's fairly clear compared to normal. It's not too muddy. And we've got a good steady breeze going. So usually when the wind's blowing, I'm going to try to fish something that moves. I've been out here for about 45 minutes and I've caught 3 on a crankbait, or 4, which is a moving bait. And I'll show you what I'm throwing. How well you all can see that. That looks like a pumpkin seed is the color of it. You can see it's got a little bit of a bill on there. This one is called a DT6, which is made by Rapala. And what DT6 means is dives 2, which is DT, and it's a 6-foot bait. So Rapala actually makes this anywhere from a DT4 all the way up to like a 22, I think. This lake's fairly shallow. I don't know off the top of my head how deep we are right now, but we're under 10 foot of water. I'll turn my electronics on. We can show you all that if you're interested. So I'm staying shallow. I'm kind of going I'm kind of going parallel to the bank instead of casting straight at it and reeling it back. And the reason for that is most of these fish are going to be in the first.
Pause, Easton. We got a question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Using a specific, oh, wait a minute. Are you using a specific color for certain times of the year?
Yes. So I'll let Easton talk about that, but I got a chart to show you guys that'll help.
So I actually caught one earlier, and I knew we should have kept it, but there's a lot of bait fish in here that look a lot like this. So there's two types. There's what we would consider a rock bass. Of course, there's bluegill in here, and there's shad. So shad are like minnows, pretty much. They grow up to a couple inches. If you're ever out on the lake, especially in the summertime, and you see little fish flipping, hitting the water, or you see big, like dark shadows under the water in big groups, those are shad. And they're, depending on what type of shad they are, but they're usually black and silver, which is why I have this bait tied on.
Hang on, Easton, they can't see. I got a chart up real quick. So this is just a cool little chart I found online. Actually, it's on Pinterest. It breaks it down by your weather conditions and the water clarity. You guys can see that. Now, this is just a general, very basic guideline. The premise I follow is if it's clear water, no matter where it's sunny or bright, I stay more natural colors. So your greens, clears, things like that. And we'll show you some examples of those just a second when I stop screen sharing. And then as the water gets murky to dirty, I go to the more contrasting colors. So chartreuse, black. This June bug is actually like a purplish color. Essentially, fish are sight predators. They can sense things in the water as well. But when it's dark, you just need that little extra thing that they can see it. That's all essentially what you're going for. And now shallower fish, the water might be clear more towards the shallow. And as you go out into deeper water, of course, there's less light. So it forms more of a dark or dirty water scenario. So just something to think about. So, okay. Easton, show them that bait again now.
All right, so this, well, how well you can see the colors, it's black on top and white on the bottom. So that is colored like a shad. I've got this one tied on.
He's cutting out. So.
There's a bunch of shadows. And this is
Okay. He's freezing up. So here's this bait. This is why I did this, stayed here. So here's a similar color scheme. It's black on top with a white belly. This is shad. So this is most natural fish will look like this. Silverish black. So this is what he's throwing. And this is a very good clear water type bait. So, and you can get the same color but more translucent, so you can see through it where it's more clear. So while he troubleshoots that. And so these are the moving baits he's talking about. So you got this is a crankbait. Now, do we understand how a crankbait operates? Okay, so let me get a few more here. Like crankbaits become a problem real quick. You can get a bunch, and it's an addiction. It really is. So I ask for them every year for Christmas, and my wife looks at me like, "Do you not have enough?" And I'm like, "No, I don't. I need more." So they get really large with large bills. So let me find.
I can ask a quick question. What does the bill matter?
So that's what I'm trying to find the different shapes too. Here, so I can go over that real quick. There's another one that's a more chartreusey color, so I throw that in darker water conditions. So let's go over these bills now that I got different shapes. So this one, which if you look at it from this angle and then from this angle, it's more square. So what you see here is the line tie. So this is where you attach to your line. It's that little thing. And I have a split ring right here so I can detach and attach real quick too. So essentially this square and the shape of this bill, as you reel the bait towards you, the water pushes against it. And so that makes it dive. So longer the bill, the dive deeper it goes, essentially. So the shape of the bill also affects its wobble. So it's not just cruising through the water like this. It's actually shaking as it goes. And this one, you can't really hear it, but it has a rattle in it too. So it like thumps as it goes. And it makes silent versions too. So this little square shaped bill really makes this erratic and wobble a lot. So that you're trying to do a reaction. So the fish sees it and he reacts, it goes. And in these deeper water bills, it still wobbles, but it's a much more drastic kind of wobble like that, more swingy. Now, some don't have any bill at all, and they'll stay like this is the top of the water, and they'll stay like right here. So now the faster you reel, the deeper they go until they hit their limit that the bill is actually designed for. So, and then line size determines how deep they go. So I could put this bait on with, say, 20-pound line, and it wouldn't go as deep as it says it will, just because that line is also resisting the water and keeping it up. But you go to 10-pound line, you might get another 2 feet deeper with it. So, but the key here to all this fishing stuff is it can get as crazy and complicated as you want it to be, or as simple as you want it to be. So you say, like me, I run 12-pound line on all my poles. It goes as deep as it's going to go. I'll just change baits, go to a deeper bait. Now, my buddy, he'll have 30 different rods and reels and all different line tests, and I get confused. I don't know what he's doing. So any other questions on crankbaits per se while we're on that topic?
So
Go ahead.
do you reel them in like just all at once, or do you reel for a second and wait? I mean,
Yes.
what's the magic?
The standard retrieve is cast, reel back towards you. Now, for them to truly be effective, you want the bill to hit stuff as it's coming back towards you. So rocks, trees, limbs, things like that. They'll work if you don't hit anything, but they're really effective if they hit something. So say you're reeling and this is a rock and it hits, it's going to deflect off. And that's going to cause that fish to react and think it's wounded, an easy meal, the fish is disorientated. So now even in trees and stuff, if you can hit a bunch of trees with it as it's coming back, I know with these giant treble hooks, you'll think there's no way in heck that's coming through a tree. But you'll be amazed what these things will come through. And what a little single hook bait, you'll get hung on the littlest thing. I swear, it'll drive you nuts. But that's where they shine. Now, sometimes, like you were stating, the cast, reel, and pause is the retrieve as well. You just play around with it. Like Easton's probably tried different speeds, different retrieve style. So he probably reel, hit something, pause, just let it float. And some of these will float up and some will sink. So that's a good thing. Just try it. It's not gonna hurt. The fish ain't gonna eat it if you ain't gonna eat it, you know?
I just said that bait I was throwing is a DT6. It dives to 6 feet. Right now my boat, I just checked, is sitting in 7 feet of water. Well, it's reading right off, the cameraman's right under him is where it's reading from. I'm not casting out here, I'm casting up towards the bank. So I know for a fact that I'm throwing a 6 foot bait and shallower than 6 foot of water. And that's good because I can reel it slow, which means it's not going to dive as hard as it should. And also I can reel it until I feel it hit the bottom and then just slow down just a little bit and start reeling it. And I know it's right along the bottom. And what that allows is it digs into the rocks. Now, if you reel it too hard, obviously it's going to get stuck. But if you can keep the nose of the bait down, just ticking the rocks, a lot of times that'll trigger a bite.
So a few things before we actually dive too deep in this is you have to think like the fish. You can have the prettiest color bait in the world that you just love, but if the fish doesn't know what it is, it's not going to eat it. So fish are much more intelligent than we give them credit for. But that's the thing. You got to know the fish you're after and know the bait that you're trying to mimic. Like a crayfish is not going to be swimming out in the middle of the lake. They're not going to be there. So fishing that bait out there is not going to do any good. Now fishing it right off the bank in the rocks, that's where it's going to be effective. So that's the two big keys: is know the fish you're after and its habits, and then know the bait you're trying to mimic to catch that fish.
And if y'all can see these trees up here, so I put the crankbait down because those treble hooks, throwing it in that mess is going to get hung up. So now I've picked up what's called a beaver style bait. You see that? That's called a Texas rig. It's pretty simple.
Here it is in a little bit easier to view version. So it's a
So-
crayfish mimicker. So it's got claws and a solid body.
Am I still on?
So, and this one has ridges in it as well. It's kind of hard to see. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. And that just displaces water as it's sinking.
The way I've got this tied up is just a hook. And then I put on a 1/8 ounce weight. A lot of people fish heavier than that, but I like it shallow. I like it lightweight because it goes slow when it falls. If I was fishing a deeper lake like Cumberland or Dale Hollow or something, I would probably look for a little heavier weight because I know I'm going to be fishing deeper. So you tie that on. I use the improved clinch knot. You got your weight up here, it slides.
Okay, so just because it's kind of hard to see for when Easton's showing you guys. So this is a bullet weight, shaped like a bullet. The line feeds in through the top and comes out the bottom. So this will go in line with the line. It doesn't attach separately. So you have to put this on and then attach your hook. Does that make sense? Okay, so
With these plastic baits, a lot of times you'll hear them called creature baits. No rhyme or reason to exact. For some reason, I've been catching some fish on this one,
hang on, Easton. You're cutting out. And we had a question.
and you can see at the tail.
I heard somebody trying to ask a question. Nope. Okay. So
I have a
So
question.
I've taken the.
hang on. Sorry, he's lagging.
okay with if you were to, I know a lot of it's trial and error and just kind of figuring out, and that, but if you were to go to like the Rapala website or whatever, and you click on, creature bait, or you click on a spinner bait or whatever, is it going to give you some general kind of like what you all are telling us, like typically this would be used in this type of conditions, or does it just assume that as a fisherman, if it's this color, that's the conditions it would be used in? Does it give any of that?
That is variable based on the company.
Okay.
So a lot of them will kind of give you reference, at least the depth of the bait and what it'll run. If it does have a depth, they'll give you the weight, and basically the specifications is about all I can guarantee they'll give you.
Okay.
So, which is not very good on their part. It would be better if they described it. Now, I think they'll do that more with their newer designs.
Okay.
But there's a lot of these things that have been out, and it's just kind of like you're expected to know, which is terrible for them to be that way about it. I agree. So that's just something.
Okay.
These plastic baits, Andrew showed you the Texas rig, which is about all I throw. I throw a lot of plastics, but every one of them I throw on a Texas rig. And I don't know if you can tell here, there should be some fish on this tree, and I can feel underneath dragging this bait along the bottom. So I'll throw it up there next to the tree, and I can feel it. And when it hits the bottom, I'll feel it. The line will get slack in it. And I'm just kind of hopping along the bottom, very similar to how you would think a crawdad would. And I'll throw this one that's this color. And if I don't get bit on it here, probably the next time I pick it up, I'll take this off and change. And I've got 3 or 4 different kinds that I typically try. Most of them are the same color except for this one. Here's two of the.
What's he showing us here? Okay. Looks like that's another beaver style bait.
Baits that I really like. One of them is a Cinco, just a worm.
So now you're gonna worm. So since Easton's hard to see, and just like crankbaits, I have enough plastics to save the world. Here's a Cinco, It's a straight worm. There's nothing fancy to it. I mean, so this is the thing too to learn, is that these terms we're using of Cinco is an actual brand, but this is made by a different company, but all these worms are referred to as Cincos. It's like the one company got it right and everybody else copies.
Kind of like Kleenex.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's a good
Or Coke.
comparison. Yeah. So basically it's just a straight worm that tapers towards the tail, but has no paddles or nothing. So,
Do you hook it on like you would a regular worm?
so get a hook here. So Easton fishes Texas rigs, which most people will with these style baits, because it protects your hook from everything else, because your hook is buried in the bait itself. So, get my hooks out of here. So you would use a hook like this. It's a Ewing hook, EWG. So it has this nice little thing right here and a big, almost like a swoosh is what I like to call it. It's not the technical term. Don't quote me on that. So essentially what you'll do is you'll take what's the head of the worm, which is flat. And you'll take the point of your hook and you'll insert to the top of the plastic. And this is the same for all plastics you're going to Texas rig. And you'll push down until you get to the bend of the hook, right there. And then what you'll do is you'll push it out the side like that. So, and then you'll run it up the hook. And now this one has these nice little lip right here, so you can push it up on that. Now there are ones that are called straight shanks that just go straight to the eye of the hook. But this one is nice because it'll push it right up there. You think as many times I've done this in my life. There we go. Now you see it sits just like that. So now you've got your hook hanging out. So the way these are designed is you want it to look like this. So what you're going to do is take it, bend the worm, insert the hook, and push it into the worm. And that's essentially the Texas rig. Now the straighter you can get it, the better. It's like this has a nice crook in it. So I would readjust this multiple times. Now you can leave the hook completely embedded in the plastic. Let me try to do this again. Or you can push it on through. You can see the hook's now kind of sticking right out the top there. And then you pinch the worm itself, push it forward, and just barely cover the tip of your hook. So now I can run my hand over that and I won't catch that hook point. So what that's going to do is if you pull this up over a log, hook's not going to catch in the log. But it's also close enough to the surface to where when you set the hook on a fish or you jerk your rod up, you don't have to pull through all this plastic before the hook gets to the fish's mouth. So usually if I'm fishing thicker stuff, I'll leave it buried more into the plastic. And if I'm not, I leave it more exposed. That way I can get a better hook set. Does that make sense?
How's that one or done?
No, so like this bait right here, if I don't catch any fish on it, I can remove it from the hook and put it back in the bag.
Oh, so you can
And use
reuse
it. Yeah, you can reuse these things. I mean, sometimes you get lucky and you'll catch 20 fish, and sometimes a little bitty bluegill will grab the back of it and rip it off. I mean, yeah, it's the nature of the beast. So like these creature baits, like Easton was talking about, like this is one. This is a brush hog. Like they got some really awesome names. Brush hog. I like one called a space monkey. Like, yeah, fish eat space monkeys. So this dude's got these little tails, which mimic the claws, and then it's got this as well. It's another big paddle. So these will twirl in the water, and little fish will bite these off and rip them off, and it'll drive you nuts. But this bait right here, I'll tell you right now, the brush hog is probably the most thrown creature bait, and they work everywhere. I have probably caught a fish on one of these everywhere I go. They're just, for some odd reason, they just work. I don't know.
What type of fish are you fishing with that?
So you can catch bass with these. Catfish will bite these too. And these are meant to target your major predatory fish. So bass, crappie will eat these. They make these in different sizes. So like this one is just called the baby brush hog. They have the teeny brush hog, which is probably that big. And then they have the mega hog, which is like another down to here. So let that be. And then here we go. Here's another one that's a good creature one. So this is a lizard.
I like him.
So his color is pumpkin fire. Makes no sense, these names. So this guy is just another creature bait. He's got a lot of little appendages and stuff. Now you rig him the same as that worm I just did. The key with these guys, he has a flat side and then a rounded side. So just play with how you rig it until you can get him to lay flat.
Can you hook those on a Ned, like a Ned rig, or with like the Cincos? Can you use a Ned rig with those two?
Yes, yes. So the Ned rig, I don't have any of those, but essentially you use a hook like this. Now this hook has a weight attached to it already. So these are called shaky heads, or essentially it's a jig. Yeah, Easton's got a Ned rig. So essentially this is your weight already, so you don't have to add your bullet weight or any kind of weight. And this one has a screw in head. So you take your bait and screw it in to that, and that holds it in place, and then you do the hook the same. You just bury it in there. So this gives you a more direct fall. And now the Ned rig she's talking about is come out in the last couple of years. It's the latest and greatest trend. So see if Easton's got one.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Is there a difference with those fake baits you're using? Fishing from a boat or fishing from the shore?
No.
You know what I'm saying?
No, because it's essentially you fish the scenario. So from Easton's boat, he might address a tree that's in the water differently than you would from the bank, but essentially that same bait's going to work.
Oh.
Yeah. So like the brush hog, I fished around trees and stumps and anything like that. And the Cinco, this bait, where it shines is when you're not having any luck with anything else. You can rig this with no weight, cast it out in the water, and it'll sink very slowly. And the whole time it's sinking, it's kind of just got this little slight wobble to it. And for some odd reason, it just works. I think because it's subtle and it's not aggressive. And when the fish just aren't aggressive themselves, they don't want to chase food that's aggressive. It's not worth their energy. So,
All right.
and then this one, this is just a crayfish. This looks like a crayfish. Of course, his claws will wobble in the water as he goes. Now, this one's cool as far as the color scheme goes because he has a different colored belly. So as this is falling, his claws will kind of flash that color. So that could trigger a reaction from a fish as well in darker water. So I throw this color. It's still greenish, but it has enough flash to it. This would be like murky water. So think like tea-colored water. So, or dirty bath water, essentially. So that doesn't mean it won't work in dirty water. If you put the bait right in front of the fish's face and he's hungry, he's going to eat it. Doesn't matter. He's not going to be like, that's too light. The water's too dark, man. I'm not touching that, you know? So, yeah, essentially the Ned rig, like she was talking about earlier, it's a weighted bait. You cast, it'll hit the bottom, and it'll sit up like that. And that's just the way the weight's designed. It'll have a flat part on the bottom or a rounded head like mine had. Like this. This one's rounded. It's kind of hard to tell. So they come in different shapes. Like some will have a flat spot, so it'll sit on the bottom like this. So your bait isn't laying on this, it's laying like this. So, and what you do is you drag it back towards you. So it's moving in the water like this. So now if you put a worm on it, like she's saying, your worm's gonna look like this. It's just gonna kind of waving at them. Now the crayfish, when you rig it correctly, it'll look like it's defending itself. It'll be perked up with its claws up, like it's trying to swim away, because crayfish swim backwards. It's really strange. Look up some YouTube videos on it. It's pretty cool. They don't swim forwards, they kind of swim backwards like this. So when it's up, it looks like it's trying to defend itself or get away. And so that fish sees it as an easy target. So any questions on those guys? It's a good question with the Ned rig. That's getting to be a pretty normal technique that wins a lot of tournaments right now. So.
And I don't know if you can follow me or not. I do have a Ned rig.
No, we can't. Oh, jeez. I love technology, guys. So, yeah. So, what's the next kind of general bait questions we have? Are we following so far? Is
I have
this
a
getting
question.
complicated? Yeah.
So with the plastics, you're pretty much just dragging the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
fishing that way. When would you choose to do that versus using like a crankbait that dives to 6 or something like
Okay.
that?
So a lot of it is trial and error, like was mentioned earlier. But I know from experience, and now you'll know from me telling you, hopefully, is that if I'm fishing a tree that's in the water or grass or something like that, I want something that I can throw over a limb and let it sink into the middle of the tree, and then I can pull it back out of the tree. Or I want something that's going to mimic the prey that's in that tree. So usually what I'll do is I'll come up to a tree and I might throw a crankbait on the edges of the tree or through sections that I think it'll come back out of. So it's hitting those branches and it's acting all crazy, like it's injured. And if they're not wanting that, then I'll pick up a plastic or a jig, which is essentially another weighted jig like I showed earlier that has a skirt on it. And then I can get it into the thicker parts of the tree. And so it'll fall right in front of their face. They want it. I'll pull them out. Now, I mean, that doesn't mean you can't throw a plastic bait in open water where there's just rocks on the bottom and it'll still work. It's just fish are finicky and they're particular on what they want. And some days you've got to have the right color or stand in the front of the boat. I don't get it.
What about spinner baits?
Yes. I actually left those in my boat in the barn. Easton, you got any spinner baits?
Yeah, I've got some spinner baits. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Show us one. So spinner baits are cool. They have blades on them. So once he shows you one, there's Colorado blades and willow blades. It's just the shape of the blade. They come in gold and silver blades, and then they have a weight on it as well, so you don't need weights. And they are essentially cast and retrieve. And as you're retrieving them, the blades spin and they flash in the light. And so when these smaller bait fish, when they turn or flick in the water, their scales are shiny, so they'll reflect light. And essentially what you're doing is causing the fish to react to that flash of light. So those are good springtime baits and in grass. So I don't know what it is about the spring, but they just work good. I think the fish are just on edge. They're ready to feed and everything. So
Would a rooster tail be good in the spring as well?
yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Rooster tail. I know I've got one of those. I think I'd have everything here with me. So the rooster tail is this little guy. And it's got a blade on it as well. And this is what the blades on the spinner baits look like. So when you're reeling this, it's coming back to you like this, and that's just flashing as it comes back at you. So these guys come in lots of different sizes. These guys are good for little panfish like bluegill and stuff. So if you don't want to mess with live bait and you just want to go out for an hour or two and cast around, they come in all different sizes and weights. There's another one that's yellow. I got a black one. There's a nice pink one. Just whatever the day calls for.
And on those, do you put a weight on them, or do you don't?
No, they're self-weighted. So the colored part on it is the weight, and they come in different weights already.
Okay.
You can buy a package that has a whole range. Okay, Easton, show us that spinner bait. Stop on the phone and show us a bait.
I got spinner bait.
Can't see it.
Can you see
Yeah.
the spinner bait?
Nope. Your screen's not loading quick
He
enough.
sounds like that Charlie Brown teacher.
Yes, it's a good comparison,
I got a
actually.
spinner bait for you, buddy.
Well, it ain't showing up.
Yeah.
It's always something.
I've got it for you.
Oh, the
Can
joys.
you hear it?
I can hear you, but we can't see nothing except for you crouching over. So,
What type of
All
fish
right.
do you catch on a spinner bait?
so
All right, well,
you can do bass. I'm gonna mute him.
Spots and you'll
Okay. I muted him and he's still coming through. I can't get rid of him. Okay, there he is. Sorry. So spinnerbait you can use for bass and things like that. Oh, I see one right there.
Yeah. Can you guys kind of see that?
Yeah, move it just a touch closer.
It's like a beetle bait.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah. So that the black head with the white dot is your weight. And it's got a wire with it as well. And then you got your blade over here. And that blade causes vibrations and flashes in the water. And they'll come in all different colors and weights. Now, you would use those for bass. You can get different versions, go after muskie. Essentially, the size depends on what you target. So you go with smaller ones, and you can target smaller fish. Now, fish will go after something that's bigger than them. I don't understand that. You see bass with bass of the same size or bigger in their mouth trying to eat it. They just react. Is what the spinnerbait does. Oh, I see a fish. I think Easton caught a fish. I wouldn't believe it if I didn't see it on video. So that's what they're good for. All these baits you can downsize and upsize. Like I found these guys in the bottom. Here's a little tiny crankbait. Now these guys right here catch bluegill, small bass, everything like that. So in comparison to the big monster, so you can actually get a good size reference here. He's little. Now these guys are fun in the creek, ponds, good for kids. So have a pair of pliers though, because the treble hooks are really tiny and hard to get out. And they'll catch you just as well as the fish. So, any other questions on spinner baits?
How do you just cast them out and reel them right back in, or do you like reel and let it sit, or do you just experiment like you're saying with the other?
Yeah, it's experiment. Most of the time it's catch and retrieve amongst stuff. So you want to be as close to something as you can be. So you cast it next to the limb, drag it down the limb. I've had luck fishing it like a plastic before too, though. Casting it in a tree and letting it fall down. Because as it falls, those blades are still flashing. Just because you stop reeling doesn't mean they stop flashing. So an effective strategy with those guys is to cast them out, reel, or let them sink to you. They don't sink anymore, and then slowly reel, and they'll stay right on the bottom. That's another good strategy with those guys as well. So,
Do you ever use a bobber with any of those?
no. You can, technically. There's nothing wrong with it. A lot of people will do that to control the depth. But it's not as common, that's for sure.
Okay.
Because a lot of these baits are not just you cast out there, you set your pole down, and you're hanging out. These are more, you're physically actively searching for the fish, not letting the fish come to you.
This is my first summer of trying to do bluegills, so I'm normally fish for catfish. So
yeah, so you're used to the sit and wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really like the being up moving a lot more. So
Yeah. So
okay.
So like the rooster tails or this little guy would work. Yeah. These guys are at Walmart. They're really fun. They're hard to cast sometimes because they're so light. And those guys you can cast, round, move, cast again, cast over here, move around. On her spinner bait that she showed us, she had another little jig head, that little black head. That one detached, actually, I think. They make some like that are about that big. Yeah, about that size that she's showing us right here. And those work well for bluegill too. And those are essentially smaller versions of the bass version.
Okay.
So, and those guys you can throw around rocks and stumps and all that good stuff as well. So essentially you'll throw those out, work your rod up and down a little bit, which is causing that bait to go up and down like that. And if nothing bites, reel back in and try somewhere else.
Okay.
But don't be afraid to come back and try that spot again, because sometimes that first cast alerted the fish that something's there. And the next time he'll be looking to eat something.
Awesome.
So, I don't know how many times we've gone down the same bank as somebody else and caught a fish on the same bait they were throwing. So it's just, if they're ready to eat, they're ready to eat. So. Okay.
And I mainly fish on the river. I live on the river, so it'd be the same thing basically, right? Is what you're using in the lakes.
Yeah. So I fish the Kentucky River a lot for bass. They used to run a little tournament circuit out of there every Thursday night. Its populations are not normally as high in rivers for your major sport fish, so bass, crappie, and things like that. So I usually downsize my baits because usually those fish are smaller and they're looking for smaller bait. So I'll go to smaller or slower presentations.
Okay.
So,
awesome. Thank you.
So I think we've covered a lot of the basic baits. So I think one of the major things I heard some people mention from the emails is which rod and reel do I use with which bait? Is that something we need to cover? Okay, yes. It's good enough for me. One's enough. Okay, we got plenty of time still. So this PowerPoint that I worked so hard on, show you guys.
Can you hear me, Andrew?
No, man. You just rough right now. I'm sorry. Now, here we go. I got some good pictures right here. So right here in the top right, here's a good picture of a spinnerbait. Got some different plastic worms right here in the middle. Got your crankbaits over here on the left. And these little small jigs down here, that's what I was talking about earlier that was attached to her spinnerbait, these little guys. They're just a little weight, and you take a little plastic bait and you slide onto it. Now these guys, that plastic bait, like I showed you with the Texas rig, you just essentially just slide these guys on. Think of like you're putting your sock on your foot. That's the best way to do that. So let's see, let me find, here we go. So this cool chart, it looks extremely complicated, and it is. So this is just a cool little chart, and over here, which I'll send this to you guys, so you don't have to worry about taking pictures of it right now. So it breaks down each bait based on what they are. So we got, let's do one. So jigs. So you've got flipping and casting jigs, swim jigs, football jigs. It tells you what line type, a suggested line size. Now, when it says leader, essentially all you're doing is changing the line type towards the end or that's attached to the bait. That's very advanced. Don't worry about that. You've got your gear ratio of your reel, which essentially for every turn of the reel, how much line do you take up? So if you're throwing a plastic, you want a faster reel because you don't want to waste your time in water that there's no fish you're targeting. Now you're throwing a crankbait, you want a little slower reel so it has time to dive and stay at that depth. And usually your lower ratios, which would be the 5-to-1s, like this one has 7-to-1 and 8-to-1. Let's go down. Crankbait. So down here, you can see my mouse. It's got the gear ratios at 5, 3-to-1. So it's just a slower retrieve. So, and then it's got, back up here to our jiggies. The rod type has got bait casting. Do we know what a bait caster is?
No.
Okay. Oh, that's what Easton's been fishing with the whole time. It's this guy right here. So now don't think you have to use this. You can throw these baits on spinning rods too. These reels just typically go on heavier action rods that can handle the force and what you need to get a hook through a fish is essentially what it is. So this is a cool little chart. I really like this chart. So this will be something you guys can look through. And this just gives you a general guide as to what people think works. And it's all particular on what you like too. I prefer stiffer action rods for everything. That's just my preference. Some people like lighter action rods. But essentially think you want lighter action, more flex in the rod. So essentially how quick this bends and gives with moving baits. Because when that fish bites that bait, you don't want to be so ready that you pull it right back out of its mouth. So when you go to set the hook, the rod will actually give a little bit with the bait and make sure it goes into the fish's mouth. So, okay. And line selection is purely up to you. There's multiple types of line. There's fluoro, what's left me, monofilament, and braided line. So your fluoro and mono are essentially what you think of as clear fishing line. Mono is the original do-it-all. I think Easton uses mono a lot. Mono floats. So if you're not worried about your bait sinking, use mono. It's got a lot of stretch. So you don't have to worry about pulling a bait out of a fish's mouth as easy, or if the fish pulls too much, the line's a little forgiving. Fluorocarbon is more of a glass type material, and it's a lot stiffer and it's more resistant to abrasion. So if you're fishing trees and rubbing your line against a tree limb the whole time, you could cause a nick in the line and cause it to break. So fluoro is more resistant to that. Braided line is essentially like a rope. So you see all the guys on TV fishing for tuna and they have that bright yellow fishing line. That's braided line. And it's really like rope. Now that stuff is good for topwater baits and dirty water conditions. Because it's basically, I fish 30-pound mono, and if I hook a tree, the tree's coming in with me, or I got to cut it. It's not going to break. It's super tough. And you don't have to worry about that. It has no stretch. There's nothing to it. It's a little tougher on your reel. It can wear down a reel really fast. And I usually only use it for topwater bait, something that I'm expecting a bigger fish to hit, and I want that power to get him in. So I don't know if Easton's got any braided line on his boat or not. He's moving now real good when he's not talking to us. So
Have we gone over any topwater baits yet?
no, we have not, and that's a good point.
Can you hear me, Andrew?
I can hear you. We can see you.
Hey,
man.
Andrew.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've got some topwater. I've got a buzzbait with braid tied on, ready to show you.
Well, show us, man. Show us. And I'll get some other
Can you
types out.
see him?
I can see you moving. Of course, as soon as he's ready to do something.
Can you see me right now, Andrew?
Everybody else see him
About
okay?
watch me get hooked in the leg. Can you see me, Andrew?
I can see a picture. I can't tell if it's moving or not, to be honest.
I have a black screen on him.
Oh,
You see the buzzbait?
no. You're not working, man.
Mine too.
Well, I got a buzzbait tied on.
Well, that's good for you.
I mean, I'm showing
Sorry.
bait.
I can't even see your bait, man. We just got a nice lake background, and that's okay.
I don't even have that.
So, buzz bait, essentially what he's
Somebody
trying to.
laid
So, it's got a blade right here. It spins. So, this is going to be on the surface, top water. So, as it's coming across, this part is under the water. This part's right on the surface, and it'll spin and cause disturbance on the top of the water. So, fish detect that, come up and attack. So, really cool YouTube videos with top water baits. You'll see big fish just come out of the water. It's really fun. It gets you pumped if you want to go fishing. So they've got those guys in all different sizes, double blades with clickers.
When would you use something like that?
These guys are good early morning and late evening because that's when those fish are more active on the top water. Now, that doesn't mean that in the middle of the day, if you've got a shaded area like East was talking about earlier with a limb laying down, throw that sucker over there and bring it right across. Sometimes fish are just active. This one's actually got a clicker on it too, this little silver piece right here. So as it spins, that blade's going to hit that and cause an extra little clicking noise. So, and you can actually bend these out or in and get different sounds. So. And they make, like I said, they make double-bladed versions. They come in all colors. Here's a white one. So, and you can take this off, these skirts, which are little silicone strands, and you can actually put a plastic bait on this too if you want. So you can put a crayfish or a frog type one, and you've got extra little flippers giving you more action. So that's a buzz bait. That's one general version of the top water. Yeah.
Color, like kind of the color rules that we talked about earlier, apply across the board.
They do. I actually don't get too complicated with my colors on the buzz baits. It's black and white.
Okay.
So I haven't really pinned down a time of year of what color I think works better. I usually do throw black in muddier conditions, but these baits are loud. Like you hear them clink and clang and splashing. I mean, fish can't find it. Fish is just out of luck. I mean, you can't make it any easier for them. So, and they will work in dirty water and clear water. I think they work best in kind of a murky condition because that way the fish just sees it, but he can't really figure out what it is. So he thinks, I'm just going to go eat it. So different speeds work. Fast gets a faster sound. Slower gets a slower, more clinky sound. Just got to experiment and see what they're after that day. So next one is a popper. So they have a cupped mouth. We can't really see it too well. This is essentially just an indentation in the bait. They make these different sizes. Some have little feathers on the hook on the back. So these guys, your line tie is actually in there. You see it right there, the little line tie. So when you guys cast these out, they're going to float on top of the water. And you'll take your rod and make a popping or jerking motion. So essentially, if this is the tip of the rod, you're just doing this. What that's cup on that bait's going to do is grab the water. It's going to make a popping sound. It's more like a bloop, bloop, bloop. And it's just very subtle. And this works really good on a stump or something like that because you can cast it and work that stump because every time you move the rod, depending on how hard you jerk, it might just move like that. So every little time it's a bloop, bloop, bloop. So it's right there in that fish's face for an extended period of time, and he can see it. Now, the harder you jerk, the further it'll go, the louder the sound will go. But eventually it gets to a point where it's not working correctly. So you just got to kind of find that happy medium. If Easton would work good enough when he's talking to us, I'd try to get him to show us. So he's just getting a fish. So the next one, it's like this. Now this guy looks real similar to the popper, but he does not have a cup. This is a spook or a walking bait. Sometimes people call these cigar baits. The older ones, they look like you're throwing a cigar. Like here's two of them, just big tubes. These guys float on the top, and these guys you do a walking. Essentially, the way they're retrieving, it's called walking the dog. So it's another. So you point your rod downwards towards the water, and you just kind of twitch it like this. And the way these baits are designed, if it's coming at you, it's going to go side to side. So some of them have rattles, some don't. This works better in clear to murky water. And same thing, they come in all different sizes. So you got, like, this one's a good size. This one has a little weight to it too, so they're easier to cast long distance. Let's see. Where's this one? Here's a little bitty guy. These things are good for finicky fish. So fish that you know people are always on the lake fishing for. They're just very subtle topwater presentations. Any questions on those? It's a lot. I know it's a lot. We're just trying to get you guys dangerous enough to go try stuff.
I know you was talking about the plopper. What about the whopper plopper? I know my husband uses one. He calls it a whopper plopper, and the tail of it spins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a pretty cool name, I agree. They're essentially like a buzz bait. So the whopper plopper, I don't have one. It's rigged on my pole at home, which I left. So essentially it's got a hard plastic body like this, and like she's saying, it's got a fin that's attached to the top that can spin 360 around the bait. So essentially it works like a buzz bait.
Okay.
Easton's probably got one, but if I ask him to show me, the camera will freeze up. So, yeah, see, he's talking.
I got one.
Well, let's try to see it, man. Let's give you your shot.
Oh, now we're talking. Keep talking to me, Andrew. I like it.
Your moment to shine. So we'll pay you for it. So, Easton's actually my boss, so don't tell him that. So, essentially you'd fish those just like a buzz bait. They come in different sizes. There it is.
Oh, we're working. We're working. Look at that.
Get a little closer. So the different colors. See that propeller on there on the back end? So that's just spinning freely. So as you retrieve, that's splashing. Same thing, faster, you get a more loud, more water disturbance, slower. So those things are heavy. So they're really good to cast. They'll cast really far. You can get parallel with the bank if you want and cover a lot of bank with one cast. So usually I
had the buzz bait on braid if you wanted to see that too.
Yeah, we'll see it. You're working right now. You got good service where you're at. Might be able to see it on the water. I'd also like to thank our cameraman today with Easton, Justin Hamilton. He's the Hunter Ed instructor. I think Region 4, correct?
Woo.
Yeah, give him a little woo. So if you guys got any Hunter Ed questions, we got you covered. Come on, Easton. Get it together, man.
All right, there's the buzz bait.
Oh, he froze.
I don't know if you can hear it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you hear it clicking?
I can hear it. Can you guys hear it? Hurry up, get it on the water where you got service.
All right. Yes, sir.
I hope he catches one.
If you'll be able to see it.
We will
Don't count on it.
Closer to the bank.
You probably can't hear it, but it's loud.
Okay. So you can kind of start to see it in his video right there, that little white spot on the water. That's coming parallel with the bank.
I'm with that right.
Yeah, so here it comes. You can see a little better now. So essentially that's what it's doing. It's just causing splashes on the surface. And you would throw that around objects that are submerged. Yeah, so you can see it real good right there. Kind of start to hear it right at the end. So that's essentially how the whopper plopper is going to work as well. Just I just want to see one just blow up on that thing. That'd be epic.
You don't
So,
need both.
so I'll tell you right now, I'm going to tell you topwater baits are the most fun baits because you can see the fish attack it. So you'll get hooked on them, and that's all you want to fish, but then you won't catch as many fish because it won't work all day. So now there's some days that they will, and usually it's cloudy days and dirtier water conditions, and they tend to work a little better throughout the day. So questions? Any other questions on particular topwater baits or any kind of weird bait name you've heard? We can cover how it works.
So you said those are better on, do you mean topwater baits in general, or the ploppers are better with cloudy days?
Topwater in general.
Topwater in general?
Yeah. It just, you got to think when the fish is looking at the bait, this is what I go back to where I said you got to know what you're trying to mimic and what the fish can actually see. So if a fish is looking up, if it's a clear blue sky, sometimes it's harder for him to actually see the bait. And if it's got that cloud cover, it has something to contrast with. So. Go. So, any other questions on topwaters?
Unmuted. And have you talked much about the jig?
No, I actually have not. We've covered some basics. So,
all right, well, I'll just put one on and I'll try. I don't know if I have service. So this is a little bitty 3/16 ounce jig. Now these come all the way, you can get these in 1.5 ounces. So they come in a lot of different sizes. This one's just green. I try to keep it simple as far as the color. You can buy any number of color you want. I try to keep it really simple. On the back of this, so you can see that bluish green thing I've got on there is just a little crawdad. It's called a trailer, and that's supposed to mimic when you drag it across the bottom, those pinchers kick, and that's supposed to mimic a crawfish. I said earlier about how much rock this lake has around it and how many crawdads there are. So a little bitty jig is supposed to look like a little bitty crawdad, and you just want to kind of hop it or drag it along the bottom. And these can be, especially in the spring, these can be really effective.
so here's all black, and these guys, just as a reference. So his trailer is just fed right onto this hook. So it looks more like those little bitty tiny jigs in the picture where you still have exposed hook. And this right here is a weed guard. So when you hit something, it'll go right over it. But when the fish bites, his mouth will hit this and push it down to where the hook comes out and is exposed. So these guys, you need a heavier action rod. And these are still full length. I will actually cut these at an angle like this. So I'll trim it down just right before the point of the hook and at an angle. So it'll shoot like that.
There was a question earlier about what to throw, like a crankbait or a spinnerbait versus a creature bait or something slow. That it's mainly preference. I personally like to fish slow, like a plastic or a jig, but this year it just seemed like I was catching a lot of crankbait, so I threw a crankbait a lot more this year. I usually have both tied on, and I'll try one, and if it's not catching fish, I'll try the other one. So it's really, if you're very impatient, you're going to want to throw something that you can throw out and reel in real quick. Once you get the hang of it, if you're more patient, I would prefer to catch fish on a jig or a worm or something plastic.
That doesn't mean you can't fish fast with plastics also, though. Don't think it's a knockdown drag out when you put a plastic fish on. It's going to be a long day. You can fish those quick as well. Just you got to fish the conditions. That's the big thing. We can preach everything of how to use these all day long, but you fish the conditions and the situation.
Yeah, it's a lot of trial and error, and I think personally 99% of artificial baits is confidence. So a lot of fishermen won't tell you what they're catching fish on or their secret baits. But if somebody tells me to catch that they're catching fish on a spinnerbait, and they can tell me the exact color that they're catching fish on, chances of me being able to do that are very slim because I don't have any confidence in a spinnerbait. I've got a whole box full of them, but I don't feel like I'm going to catch one when I start throwing it. So I think most of fishing is what you're comfortable with and what you're confident in.
So if you guys are looking to invest in baits and stuff like that, just get you some basic baits. So I would get a Senko, some kind of creature bait like a brush hog, yeah, or a crayfish. I'd go with a brush hog. And then get you a couple crankbaits. Sometimes they come in packs, so you can get two or three different colors, different sizes, and just start with that. Because essentially that's going to cover all your presentations and all the different styles. And then from there, expand out into other stuff until you end up like me and Easton and have boats full of junk and you don't even know what you have. So and really and truly, it's keep it simple. Fish are going to eat what's already there. You get something too wild, it might throw them off. So
I try to keep especially the colors. I've really started the past couple of years. If I buy something, I try to keep it as simple as I can. My favorite color is green pumpkin. There's a green pumpkin brush hog. And the tail of it, I spray with a little bit of garlic chartreuse spray. And that just gives it a little more flash. But there's the Senko we talked about. Again, it's green pumpkin. I spray a little chartreuse garlic on the tip so you can see it a little better. But I try to keep the colors as simple as possible. This jig is close to a green pumpkin. Usually green pumpkin, black, or black main colors. I don't venture off into weird colors too often.
Yeah. That doesn't mean hot pink won't work some days.
Right.
So, like this has become my new favorite color of Senko. This is like a reddish color. It's hard to see. It's called bourbon cherry. I personally like this color. It's still a natural looking color. So, but I'm like Easton. I stick to
the name.
Well, it doesn't hurt. My wife works for bourbon people. Yes. So, but and I keep it simple too. Like here's my brush hog color. I don't know. Travis will probably get mad at me, but this is called Mardi Gras. It's got a little bit of purple flake in it. It's translucent looking more than Easton's green pumpkin. So that's just what we've had the most luck on. So
I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah, write it down. So now I probably could have fished a green pumpkin like Easton uses in those same situations, caught fish, but I have confidence in that color and that bait, and that's what I'm going to throw. So, and if you can find somebody that has the bait that you are not confident with, go with them, let them show you how they fish it, and just fish it that entire day.
Yep. I've got my grandpa's friend catches a lot of fish on a spinnerbait, and we set up a trip this fall for me to go with him, and it's guaranteed the whole time that I'm in that boat, I will throw nothing but a spinnerbait because that's what he's going to throw. I'm probably not going to enjoy it that much until I figure out how to use it, but what that's going to do is give me a lot of confidence in one. So, like Andrew said, if you find somebody that fish, go with them, because if they're catching a bunch of fish on something, eventually you're going to say, all right, let me have one of those, and that'll get your confidence up in it.
So another interesting topic here to cover is what types of water are you guys going to be fishing? Are we ponds, lakes, creeks? What's everybody got access to?
We're probably going to go to Barron River next week.
Okay, that's a good one. It's a big major lake in the state.
Look for the habitat on Barron.
No, it's barren. It's huge. There's just about everything you could ever want.
No, the habitat that the department put in.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that's something else to think about as well. So let's get some more water types though before we get into that. So I heard somebody say creek, I think, and other lakes.
Lakes and ponds.
Okay, yeah.
Little neighbor or farm ponds. I do a lot too.
Plastics are really good in farm ponds.
Yes.
And spinnerbaits.
Yes. So,
The Tippecanoe River.
okay.
That's in Indiana, so you guys
Uh,
probably never.
It's water. There's fish in it. We'll catch something. So, the way I approach a river is I look for flowing water and breaks in the flow.
Oh,
So-
yeah. I got a giant, Andrew.
Oh, you got a giant?
Got a giant, buddy.
Oh, man, look at him. He's a monster.
So this is what we were talking about with why I'm throwing this bait. I'll show you. You want the hook?
See, the bait's bigger than the fish.
Yeah. Can you?
Show him up here. See this monstrosity.
Yeah, open his mouth.
It's not that big, man. Come on.
All right.
That's
You see the?
lines
Here.
to catfish.
Can
Yeah.
you see the coloring? Can you see the coloring on it?
Yeah, his belly's got that little bit of color to it.
Now look at it next to my bait.
Oh, wow.
So bass are eating these because there's a bunch of them in here. So that's why I'm going to throw the same bait.
Well, that worked out well. It's like we set that up or something. So, but yeah, so that's what I'm talking about. Match the bait that's in the lake. So when I go to rivers, I'll probably fish more crayfish style baits and shad. So the black and whites. And then if I leave the river system and go up into a creek off the river, I'll fish bluegill pattern stuff. That just tends to be where the bluegill are. Rivers and creeks have the awesome advantage of flowing water. So flowing water presents a real unique situation where if you have a tree or rock or something that's in the current, there's an eddy that forms right behind that rock. So here's my rock, water's flowing this way, and it hits this rock, and it'll go around the edge, and right here on this backside is still water. So it's not flowing. That's where the predatory fish is sitting. So your bass, your muskies, they're waiting for a little fish to get caught in this current, hit this rock, and come around and be an easy target. So what I'll do is I'll cast above the rock, close to the edge of current, and let that current carry my bait around. Because you also got to think if there's flowing water or there's wind that's pushing water, the fish orientates to the wind. He wants his face in the wind or the moving water so he can see what's coming at him.
Yeah.
So-
If you're ever on a lake on a pretty windy day, it's not too windy here, but you want to fish the bank where the wind is blowing onto it. So if the wind is blowing from my right to left, I want to fish on this bank because it's blowing the bait fish up on it. It's the same concept as he was just talking about with Eddie.
So, and if you doing some basic research on where you're going helps too. Like if you know if it's a shad lake, which is a lot of our bodies of water around here, the wind can sometimes get heavy enough to physically push the shad in the water towards the bank. And if you can find them getting pushed towards a bank and it's windy and you can match the color with your crankbait, you should catch fish. Because those fish are going to take advantage of that situation and try to feed. So, but yeah, I usually dissect rivers and creeks in the sense I've looked for eddies and rocks and structure that can give them relief from the current. Because the fish got to swim all day long. If not, he's going to get swarmed down the water. So that's something to look for. Lakes, I look for the type of structure I like to fish. Now, that doesn't mean I want to catch fish because they might not be on that structure. But I like rocky banks with wood, so trees that have fallen down on them. If it's springtime, I want shallow water or flats. So if I'm coming off the bank, I want it to kind of dive and then get flat. That's what I want because that's where those fish are going to push up to spawn, and that's where they're going to be. In the summer, when it gets hot, I want banks that have access to deep water. So bank comes off, goes to 8 feet deep, and then all of a sudden there's another drop off. You can see this on your graph, or they make maps you can look at, paper maps, and go to that point of the lake. It'll go from 8 feet to 20 feet. Those fish are going to hang out on that edge of that drop. Because when they attack and get food, they're going to run to the deep water where they feel safe and not exposed. So that's a good line to fish. And then in the morning, they'll push more shallow. And as the sun comes out, like Easton says, they'll either go to shade or they'll push back out. So it just depends on what they're actually targeting that day. And that's usually how I break down lakes. Now, Easton brought up habitat. The department puts out habitat into these lakes. So we'll sink pallets, Christmas trees, cinder blocks. We'll put gravel beds out. All of those are online, and you can find their exact locations, and you can go try to fish those. They put out these funky looking plastic Christmas trees. Essentially, it's just a bunch of PVC pipe. Looks like something off Mad Max, if any of you guys have seen that movie series.
They've done a bunch of it at Barron here in the past like year and a half.
Yeah.
And the reports I've heard is that there's a lot of fish on them right now.
So something that you can look at, like I said, it's marked on the map. Most have GPS points too. If you have knowledge of how to use GPS, you can get right over top of them, find them with your sonar. Some are deeper, some are more shallow. So now those are going to act like submerged trees. So you got to be careful. You can get hung up in them real easy and lose your baits. So it's just something to think about. So I use baits that don't have exposed hooks unless I want to go over the top of them. So if it's a submerged tree, essentially a lot of them are like a pallet this way and a pallet this way with a Christmas tree strapped on them. So me and Easton help the fisheries guys put them out. Now, if you're throwing a crankbait at that, we all know our Christmas trees. It's going to get hung. Now, you might be able to pull it back out, but most likely you're not going to be able to. Now, a jig will come through that a lot easier. A plastic that's rigged with a hook buried in deep will come out of that easier. And those fish are going to cling to that as close as they can. So now, say that structure's in 10 feet of water, and I can see on my graph, or I want to try it, I can get an 8-foot diving crankbait and cast right over top of it and just kind of flutter right over top of it. And maybe that fish is active enough to come up and attack. So just try it all. If it don't work, try something else. So, and I will guarantee you that the spot you're fishing, there's most likely a fish there. He's just not wanting what you're offering. So
that's the most frustrating part about it.
Yes. We've had biologists come with shocking boats, and a tree I fished 1,000,000 times, they'll shock 20 fish off that dang thing, and not a single one went after any bait I threw. It's just, if they're hungry, they're hungry. Just what it is. So, yeah, so that's just how I dissect lakes and stuff like that. You'll determine what your bait you're confident in and how you're going to approach it. And then on those days when what I'm confident in isn't working, that's when I try the weird stuff that I'm not comfortable with.
And I'm getting there. Andrew is 100% there. If you're fishing a bigger lake, or even like Gist Creek Lake, which is smaller, the main lake will fish a lot different than up in the creek or the river part of the lake. Andrew is a river rat. If there's a river or a creek he can get in, he's going. He's not staying on the main lake. And they'll fish different, and it's whatever style you're comfortable fishing is where you're probably gonna catch more fish.
Yeah. Now, that also, conditions can be different on different parts of the lake as well, so be aware of that. Water clarity is different towards dams than it is towards the river. So usually rivers tend to be muddier and murkier, which is why I like to go to them. That's the style I like. I like flipping and pitching, which is what you do with your plastic baits, which is where you're just throwing them into it, working it a couple times, bringing it back out. I like that more than, well, I know there's a piece of habitat out there in 10 foot of water that I can't see, so I'm just going to cast that direction and hope I find it. I can't do that very well. It bothers me, but it's just as effective, and I'm getting better at it. Even I am learning stuff every time we go out. So, any other questions pertaining to anything else? Don't be afraid. It's crazy and basic, or just throw us at us. We're ready.
Or any comments about virtual bow?
Yeah. Since Olivia's here, say nice things.
Oh, Olivia's here now. We better not ask that question if Olivia's here.
Oh, I think y'all did a great job.
Well, thank you. We try. We can talk all day about this stuff. It's our thing.
Do you see the picture behind my screen of the river? That's what I'm fishing in right at the moment. It's not moving at all.
Yeah.
And it's about 1.5 feet low,
Mm-hmm.
not 2 feet. So it's not moving. So I need to stick to the rocks and.
Yeah.
There's probably a whole lot of crawdads and crayfish if it's real rocky.
Yeah. So let me do a screen share here real quick.
Which time we got?
Okay.
What time is it?
So right here, this species of, oh, I didn't expect to do that. So this species of fish right here in particular, this bronzy colored fish is a smallmouth. They tend to be in your flowing water system. So your rivers and stuff like that. The largemouth is more slow water lakes. You can find them in both. But these guys right here, they tend to like that dirtier water, flowing water. And then in lakes, they like to go deep. So that's the kind of stuff that I would target in that kind of river system, because that's what I go for. Now, if it was catfish, I would target a little different. I'd go, the stinkiest bait I can find and find me some transition points that go from deep to shallow water with some rocks or a little bit of mud, and I'd cast my rod out and I'd sit in my chair and wait for something to happen. So
And we're gonna go try one more spot.
Okay.
We'll have service. We had service there last time, but it doesn't matter.
yeah, turn your
Catfish.
Yeah.
So I know, I've done, gone jugging and
Mhm.
noodling for catfish, but I mean, what is the best thing to do? Is and mostly what I've caught catfish on is just like literally a worm and a bobber,
Yeah.
So when you're like just casting out and waiting, I mean, is that a bait that sits on the bottom on the mud where they are?
Yes.
And you just wait for them to come along? Okay.
Yeah. So essentially, your catfish are not sight predators. They're more smell, and their barbels, which catfish, they look like whiskers. That helps them sense on the bottom. And so they're looking for the stinkiest stuff they can find, like chicken breasts in your grape Kool-Aid left on the hood of your car in 90-degree weather, like nasty. Yeah. No. So.
Would you be willing to share that chart about baits that you showed us?
Oh yeah, I will send you the PowerPoints, and since Olivia is here, Olivia, the virtual stuff, the virtual classroom stuff, have they had access to that yet?
For the intro content?
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Okay.
do. I can share the link again too. You'll have to log in using your My Profile information. So first name, last name, and date of birth too. And I learned today that all of that info should be up until next year. So you guys can come and visit it back at any time. Let's say in a few months, you're out fishing again too and say, ooh, Andrew talked about the wind blowing a certain way. I wanna check that out again. So you can go in there and not only see the content, but we're trying to upload recordings of the Zoom classes, and they should be there as well. So give us like 2 weeks or so after Bo to work on those recordings, and we should get them live too. But let me put that link in the chat too, so you guys have it if some of you haven't gotten that link. So.
And where will we go to find this stuff, Olivia? Where did you say?
It will be the intro content. Is that what you're asking there, Beth?
Yes, please.
Okay. I sent it out to you guys in an email that you registered with, so you guys should have it. But I will put it in the chat here in the Zoom in just a second.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
You log into that, whatever that place is that link takes you to. If I found it, like it has all the classes and it says view class, like not so much your classes that you chose, but where it has on the right side, the view classes, then all that like PowerPoint stuff appears to be there.
Yes, it does.
So
you are correct.
It's just
I
not
accidentally deleted that one.
Classes.
Yeah. So that's a cool tool. We actually have videos there as well that teach knot tying and things like that from one of our other employees. So he was a seasonal and he was awesome making these videos and stuff for us. He goes over multiple different kinds of knots, bait caster stuff. So just give you another good quick review there, and that'll always be there for you. The entire PowerPoint will be there as well, that you can reference. Olivia just put up a link there in the chat for us. So that's a great tool. It'll be available to you. And if for some odd reason you still can't find that, and you just got a random question that you can't answer from there, don't be afraid to contact one of us, me or Easton. I think you guys have our emails from when I sent out the follow-up email asking you guys your experience levels and things like that. just ask us. It's not going to hurt my feelings if you send me a picture of the water and be like, hey, what color bait should I fish here? That'll be fine. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Hopefully it's the same day. So, I mean, that's what we're here for. We're here to help you guys get out there. I mean, me and Easton, we just go out and we're like, oh, yeah, water's murky. Let's throw this. You know, it's just stuff that we know that even when I started, I was a catfish guy. I thought those guys on TV fishing for bass were crazy. Like, okay, I mean, they're not even waiting. They're not catching anything. They've casted 1,000 times and not caught a dang thing. And then my buddy took me out on the creek, and we had an awesome day, which if it was a tragic day, I probably wouldn't be into it. And I learned what it was about, and now I don't even fish for catfish anymore. So it's all on your preference now. Catfishing's fun. You can do a lot of different things. It can be a lot more laid back. I think if any of you guys went to the last bow, they offered a jugging class. If any of you guys went to that or took that course, that was with Chase. That'd be something Olivia would probably want to offer again when we get back in person, if that's something you guys are interested in. So, any other questions on any particular fish species? Like you need trouble IDing any kind of fish, anything like that? No, we're good with that? Okay. If you do have trouble with that, if you get the fishing guides that we put out, I think it's page 19, I believe has a pretty good fish ID guide with it. So if you need help with that, and that goes over all of our regulations and everything. If I got questions on regulations and what you can and can't do.
If you catch carp, is it Chinese carp? The ones that are invasive?
Yeah, they're called Asian carp. Yeah.
Or Asian carp, yeah. Are we supposed to just throw them out?
Well, it depends more on the body of water you're on, what's technically allowed as far as do you dispatch the fish, then throw it out. If it's me, I'll keep it. I'll put it in my live well. You're not going to catch them. It's not as common. They're herbivores. They're not really predatory. You'll catch one just randomly. It'll pick up your bait because it's sucking stuff up at the bottom or something. Usually I'll keep them for my live well, humanely dispatch it when I get home, and then dig a hole and bury it. So they make really good composting stuff. So if you're into composting, they're good to throw in your pile, things like that. We are trying to remove those. Those are invasive. You can bow fish for those too. I don't know if any of you guys are taking Courtney's bow fishing class. So you can shoot them with bow and arrow and harvest them that way with a reel on it too. So all sorts
I saw that on Kentucky Field.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was pretty fun at the dam when they turned the boat on and the fish was flying everywhere.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That's another opportunity with those guys, but that's mostly what I do with them. I mean, it's perfectly fine to let them back into the water. That one fish you caught's not going to make or break the whole ecosystem. So it's a good question. There's multiple kinds of those as well. They get quite large too. So prepare yourself. If you get a good one, it'll be a good fight. So you'll think you'll have the biggest bass of your life and you'll see a yellow body and then you'll be fairly disappointed. So some other things, and I wish I would have caught Easton fast enough, is are we all comfortable taking a fish off the hook? So we've got them hooked and everything. We all comfortable with that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Easton did the perfect C method and took that fish right off. Just we don't think about it. So if you guys needed that, we could cover that. I think you guys are ready.
It's bad because they've swallowed it, and I hate to make a big hole in the fish, you know?
Yes, that is a very common problem. And that will happen with your artificial baits a lot, and especially with plastics, because when you let them sink and you put slack in your line, sometimes you don't feel them bite. Now, that's the next thing, too, is we can talk about that a little bit. We got a little time. So when a fish bites your lure, you feel it in the rod. It's like a ticking feeling. So it's like a little vibration sometimes. You'll either feel that, and then you'll know to set the hook, or you'll see your line, and it just looks like it just takes off in one direction. And it's really nice when the wind's blowing this way and water's, and then all of a sudden your line's going this way, and you're like, yeah, that's a fish. There's no question. And all that fish has done is grabbed it and just starts swimming away. So that's when you set the hook on those. Now, sometimes when that happens and you can't tell, they will swallow it deeper. Most of the time, it is better to just cut your line and let the fish have the hook. Now, your smaller fish, the hooks you buy at the store and stuff are usually not high quality, so they'll rust and the fish will pass it. Now, I mean, there's a chance he won't, of course, and if it's a legal fish and you're not afraid to clean it, take it home and eat it. if the hook's really bad in it. That would be the best option. But if you're not willing to do that, it's better to cut it and let it go and give it a chance for the hook to rust out and the fish to pass it. So it's an unfortunate side effect, but it's something that we could try to do the best we can to give the fish a chance. So.
Along the lines of you talking about them swallowing it,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't get the hook out, and it's an undersized fish.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, cut it and throw it back if you can't
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
Because
it's one of those things you're like, I want to save it. Like, it's not the fish's fault,
Right.
But unfortunately, if you are caught with an undersized fish, most wardens will probably still write you a ticket. Because there's always somebody out there that's playing I'm the good Samaritan card, unfortunately. So now, you got to think too, is if you hurt that fish and it passes on, there's turtles, there's catfish, there's other fish in the water system. It's not going to go to waste. Something will eat it. Raccoons. The fish won't be wasted. So this is the beauty of nature.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
What is your opinion of the best lake or body of water to fish in Kentucky?
Ooh. I like Elkhorn Creek, which runs through Lexington and Frankfort, Georgetown. Now, if you have a boat, you can get a lot of places, like a kayak. Obviously, the creek's too shallow and too many things like that for a bass boat. But if you got a kayak, you can get to a lot of it. Now, within Franklin County, the borders, you can wade the creek. That's legal there, but only there, because apparently somebody won a court case saying it was legal to do it only in that county. I don't know why they haven't extended that to everywhere. So, and that's what I do. So you can go to T.N. Sullivan, WMA, here in Franklin County, and they have bank access to the creek. So you can enter on public access, fish the entire creek, and come back out on public access. And it's pretty much, I would almost guarantee you're going to catch a fish if you go. Those fish are not pressured, they're hungry, and if you go in low water conditions, which on the PowerPoint I have a link to the USGS website that tells you flow levels from certain points on the creek, you can determine if the water's too high for you to go or low. And when it gets low, the fish get trapped in pockets of deeper water. So they're hungry, and that's when you can take advantage of it. Now, that's what I like.
What fish do you fish for in Elkhorn?
So there's smallmouth. There's all your basic sunfish. They have gar, which does everyone know what a long-nosed gar is? They look like a dinosaur. They can breathe air, too, which is really cool. They can come out and gulp air and breathe that way. That's why they're really good in river and creek systems when the water gets real low, because they don't depend on oxygen in the water. You can eat those guys, too. So we got a whole segment on Kentucky Field about eating those guys as well. There's drum, or white perch, as some people call them. All your Asian carp are usually found there as well. I see a lot of guys will take their boats, their kayaks, bring all their fishing rods and reels, and have their bow fishing rig strapped to the back. So if they see some Asian carp, they can get out and try to get them with their bow. So get the double whammy there. So. And the creek is really good if you want to take your family as well, because if the kids get bored, they can swim. And it's really fun for that. They flip rocks, find crayfish, pilgrim mites, all sorts of cool stuff like that. Now, if I had to pick a lake, that's tough. I do like Gist Creek Lake in Shelby County. I like Willisburg. I haven't fished there as much as Easton has, but the few times I've been there, you can tell the potential's there. Taylorsville Lake is a good one if you want a bigger lake. I like Barron River Lake, but it's far away for me. So can't travel that far every time I want to go fishing, unfortunately. The river is good. The Kentucky River can be good in certain sections, but river fishing is usually tougher. More water, usually less fish, less size fish. So, but if you're just wanting to get out in the boat and see some nice scenery and see some other wildlife, the river is an excellent choice. So, I would ask Easton him, but I think he went dark on us. I guess he just gave up. So any other questions? Or it's 7:33. I've got time if you guys got more questions. There's no rush for me to get off. Anything else? Don't be afraid. It can be the crazy question. I'm ready for it. I practiced. So, okay. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the class. I don't know, I have this question in particular about our programs. Did you guys see the kayak giveaway stuff on the department's page? Any of you guys happen to enter that?
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, well, it just ended, but we're probably gonna run it again next year. Yeah, of course, I'll tell you now, right? It's the first time I've seen you guys. Come on, give me a break. So, essentially that was a giveaway contest that me and Easton came up with the idea and we got it going. It would be, now that you guys are trained professional anglers, you could take somebody new who's never fished before and enter in this contest to win a $1,000 kayak rig. And so we'll probably run that again next year. So look for that.
Right.
Something cool.
Winner?
Yes, we selected the winner.
Dang, I guess I didn't win.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, so we'll be delivering that and doing a nice Facebook post on that and figure out who they took and everything. And it's a great opportunity to pass along the knowledge. So that's what we were going for, is to get sportsmen that are already out there to take somebody new. And not exactly a kid. You have to be 16 and older. So we're looking to take the adult who doesn't know or has been before and just hasn't bought a license in so long. So.
Does anybody want to adopt a Indiana girl to come down?
Hey, the person that won the year before last, he had an out-of-state family member come in, and they won. So it's a chance. You got a chance. So, but yeah, if you guys don't have anything else, I think we're done. Do I dismiss you? Is this a classroom? I could tell you can leave.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great job. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Check out the virtual stuff. If you got any questions, email me, email Olivia. She'll get you in contact with me. Hope you guys like all your other classes.
Awesome.
Can you hear
Thanks.
me, Andrew?
Thanks.
Bye.
No problem. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.
Mr. Disco Robot Man's back.
Thanks.
Bye, Easton. Be careful.